Marina Caldwell stepped off the small village bus just as the mist began to sweep across Rowan Vale. The air smelled of damp earth and moss, and the narrow lanes were lined with cottages built from weathered grey stone. It was quieter than she expected, almost unnervingly so, as though the whole village were holding its breath. She tightened her grip on her suitcase and turned towards the inn where she would be staying for the first few weeks. The Rowan Lantern Inn stood at the edge of the main square. A warm glow leaked from its windows, though the light felt dimmer than it should, as if wary of the encroaching mist. Inside, the innkeeper, Mrs. Clarwood, welcomed her with a polite smile. It was the kind of smile that seemed practiced, one that did not quite reach her eyes. "You are here for the History Commission, I suppose?" She spoke quietly, glancing towards the window where the fog curled against the glass. "Not many outsiders come for that." "Not anymore." Marina nodded, unsure how to respond. She felt a faint shiver slip down her spine, though the room itself was warm. "I am here to document the local stories and traditions for the county project. It should not take too long." Mrs. Clarwood hesitated, then handed Marina her room key. "I am sure you will find plenty to write about. Rowan Vale remembers more than most villages. Too much, some might say." Her strange tone lingered in Marina's mind as she settled into the small but comfortable room upstairs. The wooden floor creaked under her steps, and the faint scent of wood polish mixed with the smell of the fog that seeped through the old window frame. On the bedside table rested a small oil lantern. It looked antique, brass worn thin at the handle. A folded note sat beneath it. "Light it when the fog comes." Marina frowned. A joke? A warning? She unfolded the note, but there was nothing else written inside. Just the single sentence, scrawled hastily. Unable to make sense of it, she placed the note aside and unpacked her belongings. As she reached the bottom of her suitcase, her hand brushed a worn leather notebook. Her late mother's. She had brought it without thinking, a keepsake filled with mundane recipes, shopping lists, and the occasional diary entry. She opened it briefly, smiling sadly. Then the sound came. A single chiming ring, soft and distant, like glass tapped gently in the far reaches of the mist. Marina turned sharply towards the window. The fog outside had thickened, pressing against the glass as though trying to seep inside the room. The chiming sounded again, slightly louder this time. She stepped closer. Through the swirling white veil, a faint glow flickered on the distant hillside. It pulsed like a heartbeat, steady and deliberate. Marina had read that the valley had an old lighthouse, but she had yet to see it in person. Could that be it? But why did its light feel so intentional? As if signaling her. The chiming continued, rhythmic and strangely musical. Marina felt a heaviness in her chest, a tugging sensation she could not explain. The sound was calling her, yet she could not move. She could only stare as the glow brightened once, then vanished suddenly, swallowed by the fog. Silence returned, thick and absolute. Marina stepped back from the window. For the first time since arriving, she felt truly unsettled. Someone knocked on her door. Startled, she opened it to find Mrs. Clarwood standing there, her face pale. "Did you light the lantern?" she asked quickly. "It is best to keep it lit on a night like this." Marina glanced at the unlit lamp on the bedside table. "No, I did not think it was necessary." Mrs. Clarwood's expression tightened. "In Rowan Vale, it is always necessary." She stepped inside without waiting for permission, struck a match, and lit the lantern herself. The tiny flame flickered, casting trembling shadows on the old wallpaper. "Keep it burning, dear. For your own peace of mind." With that, she left the room, closing the door gently behind her. Marina stood frozen, listening to the fading footsteps. Then her gaze drifted again to the fog pressing against the window, and she wondered what exactly she had stepped into. The chiming had stopped, but she had a feeling the silence would not last long. The next morning arrived with a pale sun struggling through the thinning mist. Rowan Vale looked calmer in daylight, though the quiet still clung to the village like a lingering echo. Marina woke early, her thoughts circling the strange events of the night before. The chiming. The glow on the hillside. The urgent way Mrs. Clarwood lit the lantern. Downstairs, she found the innkeeper making tea. Mrs. Clarwood greeted her politely, yet something in her eyes suggested she had not slept well either. Fog has a way of stirring old memories. Best ignored if you ask me. Marina gave a non-committal smile. "I heard something last night." A sort of chime. Do you know what it might be? Mrs. Clarwood's movement stilled for a moment, the teaspoon mid-air. Then she set it down quietly. Probably the wind. Rowan Vale can make the wind sound like all sorts of things. Marina decided not to press further. She finished her tea, picked up her notebook, and stepped out into the village square. The day's first task was to meet the one person everyone suggested she speak to about the village's past. Leonard Fox, the keeper of the old lighthouse. The path to his cottage led up a narrow lane behind the church. Ivy clung to every wall, and the trees arched overhead like a tunnel carved from green and shadow. Marina reached the cottage and knocked on the door. After a long pause, the door creaked open. A tall, thin man with silver-white hair peered out. His eyes shot despite the weariness etched into his features. You must be the historian. Leonard Fox. Come in if you are not afraid of dust. The interior was cluttered but strangely organized. Maps pinned to walls, shelves of weather-worn books, lanterns of different ages lined neatly on a side table. Marina noticed a large photograph above the fireplace. A woman in an old-fashioned dress, standing near the lighthouse. Her expression calm, but her eyes dark with something unreadable. Leonard caught her looking. Eleanor Wells. A name Rowan Vale has not forgotten. Marina felt her breath hitch. Eleanor Wells. The woman from the journal she had found in her room. Though she had not yet told anyone about it. Did she live here? Marina asked softly. Lived, yes. Then disappeared. Like others before her. He spoke the words plainly, as if discussing the weather. Marina waited, but he simply motioned for her to follow him into another room. Stacks of archived records filled the space. He opened a drawer and took out a faded village map. Here. Rowan Vale a century ago. Smaller, but the heart of it has not changed. And there. He pointed to a mark near the edge of the valley. The lighthouse. My responsibility for the last 40 years. Marina noticed a hand-drawn note scribbled on the margin. A single phrase. The Night Wanderer. She felt a faint chill. She almost asked, but Leonard looked at her with a measured expression. Rowan Vale has its stories. Some harmless. Some not. If you dig too deep, you may find truths you would rather not write down. Before Marina could reply, he continued. But if you insist on learning, start in the attic of the inn. The Clarwoods keep old belongings. Things the former tenants left behind. Something inside Marina tightened. Former tenants. Eleanor Wells had once stayed in the very same room she now occupied. She sensed it without being told. She thanked Leonard and made her way back to the inn. Her mind heavy with questions. Mrs. Clarwood was at the counter when she returned. Marina approached carefully. I wonder, would it be possible for me to look through the attic? For historical records. Mrs. Clarwood's lips pressed together. Not quite a smile. Not quite a refusal. I suppose so. Though it has not been opened in years. The key is old. It sticks. She retrieved a rusted key from a drawer. Her hand shook slightly as she handed it over. The attic door was at the end of the upstairs corridor. Marina unlocked it with effort and pushed it open, coughing as dust billowed out. The room smelled of old wood and long-forgotten belongings. Trunks, boxes, stacks of fabric, all draped with sheets that looked as ancient as the cottage itself. Marina began to search through the clutter, pushing aside brittle papers and faded photographs. Then she found it. A leather-bound journal, identical to the one she had discovered in her room. Her pulse quickened. The name on the first page was clear despite the aged ink. Eleanor Wells. But this journal contained entries the other one did not. Longer. Darker. More frantic. She turned to the last written page. The light is calling again. It wants what it was promised. It knows my name now. Marina felt the hairs on her arms rise. She read on. If I do not answer it, someone else will. Someone after me. Her breath caught as she realized the implication. Someone after her. Someone in her bloodline. A floorboard creaked behind her. Marina spun around, heart racing. No one was there. But from the far corner of the attic, behind the boxes, something gleamed faintly. A soft, bluish flicker, like a dying lantern flame. Marina stared at it, unable to move. The chiming began again. Closer this time. The chiming echoed through the attic, soft yet unmistakably near. Marina froze, her breath caught in her chest. The air around her felt colder, as if the temperature had dropped without warning. Dust motes floated in the dim light, drifting lazily despite the tension tightening the room. The bluish glow in the far corner pulsed once, faint but deliberate. Marina forced herself to move. She stepped carefully over an old chest, weaving between forgotten trunks and stacks of cloth. Each footstep caused the floorboards to creak, and the chiming seemed to answer every sound she made, as though reacting to her presence. When she reached the corner, the glow vanished. Only a cracked lantern lay on the floor. Its glass was broken, its wick long dead. But the metal was warm to the touch, unervingly so, as if it had been lit only moments before. Marina picked it up, her pulse thudding. A voice called softly from behind her. "Miss Caldwell." Marina spun, nearly dropping the lantern. Mrs. Clarwood stood at the attic door, her face pale and drawn. "You should not be here alone. That room holds too many memories." Marina steadied her breathing. "I found Eleanor Wells' journal. Both of them. Why were they left here?" Mrs. Clarwood's eyes flickered with something between guilt and fear. People leave things behind when they leave Rowan Vale. Some leave more than they should. Marina took a step forward. "What happened to her?" Mrs. Clarwood swallowed. Eleanor was troubled. The light from the hillside tormented her. She would go nights without sleep, waiting for it to call her name. Some say she followed it. Others say it followed her. "And you? Do you believe the stories?" Mrs. Clarwood opened her mouth to answer when a sudden noise echoed from outside the inn. A deep, resonant hum that made the glass panes tremble. Marina rushed to the attic window. The mist had returned, thicker than the night before. It rolled across the valley like a living thing, swallowing rooftops one by one. And through it all, a single beam of pale light cut through the whiteness, shining from the distant hill. The lighthouse. But the beam was wrong. Too narrow. Too steady. Not the sweeping arc of a functioning lamp. It shone like a signal. Mrs. Clarwood whispered, barely audible, "It has woken early." Marina's heart thudded. "What has?" The innkeeper pressed a hand to her chest. "The night wanderer. The light that comes when it wants something. When it grows restless." Marina stared at her. "That is a legend. A story to frighten children." Mrs. Clarwood shook her head. "Legends are simply truths that have lived long enough to grow teeth." Another hum vibrated through the attic, stronger than before. Marina felt it in her bones. Her fingers tingled. She had felt something similar the night before, when the chiming first began. A faint pull, like a thread being tugged somewhere behind her ribs. Mrs. Clarwood stepped closer. "You need to stay inside tonight. Do not go near the hill, no matter what you hear or see. The light calls to those who are vulnerable." Marina frowned. "Vulnerable. Grief," Mrs. Clarwood said softly. "And history." Marina's breath hitched. The mention of grief struck too close. Her mother. The unresolved pieces of her past. The loneliness she had carried since childhood, made heavier by every unanswered question. "You think it is calling me?" Mrs. Clarwood hesitated, then nodded. Marina shook her head. "That is ridiculous." Across the mist-soaked valley, the beam of light shifted. It pointed directly at the attic window. Marina stumbled back, the lantern still clutched in her hand. The chiming began again. Clearer, closer, almost melodic now. It wasn't sound anymore. It was a feeling. A vibration beneath her ribcage. A whisper threading through her pulse. Mrs. Clarwood snatched the lantern from her hands and extinguished the attic bulb. "Stay away from the window," she hissed. The hum deepened. The mist outside spiraled violently, like a whirlpool of white. Marina could not explain why, but she felt something familiar in the pull. A strange echo of a dream she could never remember completely. A memory half-formed. A voice she nearly recognized. Her mother's journal had been filled with trivial entries. Yet something tugged at her mind. Something she had forgotten. Or been made to forget. The light intensified. And for a moment, just a brief, flickering moment, Marina saw a figure standing on the hill beneath the beam. Tall. Motionless. Watching her. Then the mist swallowed it whole. Mrs. Clarwood seized her wrist. "We are leaving the attic." Nah. She pulled Marina away from the corner, slamming the door shut behind them. The chiming continued, muffled but insistent. As they hurried down the stairs, Marina looked back once more. The light on the hill was no longer searching. It was fixed, as if it had found exactly what it wanted. The inn felt colder after nightfall, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. Marina sat at the small wooden table in her room, the single lamp casting long shadows across the floorboards. Outside, the mist clung to the windows in heavy sheets, muting every sound except the faint hum that drifted from the hillside. She tried to ignore it, tried to focus on the notebook she had promised herself she would fill with historical observations. But her thoughts drifted again and again to the figure she had seen beneath the light. Mrs. Clarwood had not left her side for nearly an hour after dragging her from the attic. She had made tea, spoken softly about sensible things, then finally excused herself with a trembling hand on Marina's shoulder. "Do not open your window tonight, no matter what calls to you." Marina had nodded, though she wasn't certain she intended to obey. The light still shone through the mist, a thin white spear pointing at Rowan Vale like an accusation. She could feel it even now, a prickle at the base of her skull, a strange pressure behind her eyes. She tried to write, but her hand shook. Finally she pushed her notebook aside and picked up the older journal. The second one. Eleanor Wells' journal. The one with the frantic final entries. She read the last page again, searching for something she'd missed. "The light knows me. It knows all of us. We belong to its debt. We cannot hide from a promise made before our time." Marina exhaled, her breath shaky. What promise? She flipped through earlier pages, scanning scribbles and ink-smudged lines. Descriptions of sleepless weeks. Of the lighthouse shining when it should have been abandoned. Of voices calling her name. Then she found a passage she hadn't noticed before. A date. A list of names. It looked like a genealogy. 3 branches, carefully drawn. Wells. Caldwell. Fox. Marina's stomach hollowed. Her surname, Caldwell, sat in the middle column, circled twice in dark ink. Beneath it, faint but visible, were 2 words. Blood owed. She stared at the name until her vision blurred. A knock sounded at her door. 3 soft taps. Marina stiffened. No one should be visiting at this hour. Mrs. Clarwood always knocked firmly. Leonard Fox would never come without warning. And the sound was too light to belong to either of them. She waited. The knock came again. Exactly the same. Slow. Careful. Measured. Marina rose, her heartbeat thundering. She crossed the room on unsteady feet. Her hand hovered over the doorknob. A whisper seeped through the wood. "Marina." She staggered back. The voice was unmistakable. Her mother's. No, that cannot be real. Her mother had been gone for years. Gone without a trace. Gone without answers. The whisper came again. A little louder this time. "Marina. Open the door." Tears sprung to Marina's eyes. The sound was identical, the soft Edinburgh lilt, the gentle rasp she carried at the end of her syllables. But something was wrong. Something too smooth. Too controlled. Her mother's voice, but hollowed out. Like a recording missing its soul. Marina stared at the door, trembling. Her hand reached for the knob again, compelled by grief, by longing, by the ache of every question she'd never been able to ask. But then she saw something that made her freeze. A glow beneath the door. A thin, bluish line of light. Not lantern light. The same eerie hue she'd seen in the attic. The same glow that pulsed with the chiming. The whisper came again. Sharper this time. "Marina." She stumbled back and grabbed the journal, clutching it to her chest. The chiming started outside the door, rhythmic and deliberate. The doorknob rattled gently, as though tested by an unseen hand. Marina whispered to herself, barely audible. "This is not real. This is not my mother." The chiming grew louder. Suddenly, footsteps echoed down the hall. Firm. Human. The glow vanished instantly. The whisper cut off mid-breath. Then a voice called out. A real one this time. "Marina. It is Leonard. Open the door." Marina hesitated only a second before rushing forward. She unlocked the door and pulled it open. Leonard Fox stood there, lantern in hand, his face grave. "You need to come with me." "Nah." Marina swallowed. What is happening to this place? Leonard glanced down the corridor, then back at her. "It is not the place. It is you." Before she could speak, he gently took her arm. "We have very little time. You must see the records in the lighthouse. They will explain everything. Your name. Your connection. The debt." He lowered his voice. "And why the light is calling only you." Marina's legs weakened. The light. Calling her specifically. Her surname in Eleanor's journal. Blood owed. Leonard nodded toward the mist outside. "Come." Before it decides to come inside. Marina stepped into the corridor, heart hammering. Behind her, the room fell silent. But as she walked away, she swore she heard it again. Faint as a memory. A whisper. "Marina." Eleanor left the manor just as the church bells rang 6 times, their solemn echo following her down the lane. The walk back to the parsonage was quiet, almost unnaturally so, as though the entire village were holding its breath. Her mind replayed Arthur's trembling voice and the way he had gripped her arm, desperate to make her stay away. His fear felt real, but so did Martha Greenlaw's certainty that Eleanor's presence was expected, even required. By the time she reached the parsonage gate, the light had dimmed into the deep blue of early evening. A shadow moved on the doorstep. Eleanor froze. For a heartbeat she thought it might be Arthur, having followed her. But as she stepped closer, she saw Iris Chapman sitting there, her knees tucked to her chest, her small frame trembling. Eleanor rushed over. "Iris, sweetheart, what on earth are you doing out here alone?" The girl lifted her face. Her eyes were wide, filled with something that looked very much like terror. "Miss Hargrave, it sang again," she whispered. "The song from the hill. I heard it when I was supposed to be asleep. It was calling someone." A cold shiver crept up Eleanor's spine. "Did it call your name?" Iris shook her head. "No. But it called yours." Eleanor felt the world narrow, the quiet around them tightening like a net. "Who told you that?" "My mum," Iris murmured. "She said if the hill ever calls your name, it means you're the one it wants next." Before Eleanor could respond, the door burst open. Mrs. Chapman stood there, breathless, her hand shaking. "Iris! Get inside. Now!" Iris obeyed instantly, casting one last frightened glance at Eleanor before disappearing into the house. Mrs. Chapman lingered on the threshold, her expression torn between guilt and warning. "Miss Hargrave, you need to leave this village before the full moon. Please. Before the song finds you." Eleanor stepped forward. "Why me? What does this have to do with the child?" Mrs. Chapman's voice faltered. "Because you hear it. And those who hear it never stay alive long enough to forget it." With that, she closed the door. Eleanor stood in the dimming light, her pulse pounding. Her thoughts knotted together in frantic loops. The villagers were hiding something far darker than an old superstition. And now, somehow, she had become part of it. As she reached for the parsonage door, another sound drifted faintly across the moor. A soft, lingering chord, played so delicately she might have imagined it. Except she recognized it. It was the same phrase her fiancé used to hum while working at the piano, the tune he had been playing the night he died. It was impossible. It was unbearable. And yet it was there, calling her. Sleep refused to come to Eleanor that night. Each time she closed her eyes, she heard that single haunting chord drifting across the moor. It lingered like a finger tracing the back of her neck, soft yet unbearably cold. By 1:30, she gave up entirely and went downstairs to make tea. The parsonage felt older at night. Its beams groaned in the wind, and the wallpaper seemed to ripple in the moonlight. Eleanor wrapped her robe tighter and set the kettle to boil. She was opening the cupboard for a cup when something made her freeze. The back door latch clicked. Once. Twice. Slowly, as if someone was lifting it from the other side. Eleanor's breath caught. She took a step back, heart hammering. She had locked that door. She was certain of it. The latch lifted again. Then the door pushed inward by a fraction. A thin line of freezing night air slipped into the kitchen. Eleanor snatched the nearest object, a rolling pin, her pulse beating in her ears. "Who is there?" she demanded, trying to steady her voice. No voice answered. But something else did. A whisper of melody. Soft. Familiar. The exact phrase her fiancé used to play while laughing at his own mistakes. It came from outside the door. Eleanor's hands shook violently. "This cannot be real," she murmured. "You are gone." You are gone. The melody stopped abruptly. The silence that followed was thick, expectant. Then a shadow passed across the thin gap of moonlight beneath the door. Slow. Deliberate. As though the figure on the other side knew she was listening. A knock sounded. Not with a hand, but with a rhythm. 4 beats. A pause. 2 beats. Eleanor's stomach dropped. It was the knocking pattern her fiancé always used when arriving home, a silly code between them. 4 knocks meant he had forgotten his keys. 2 meant he wanted her to hurry. Her breath broke. Her knees shook. Memory and fear tangled violently inside her chest. The door creaked open wider. Eleanor raised the rolling pin and forced herself forward. If this was someone trying to terrify her, she would not let them win. She kicked the door open with all her strength. Cold wind blasted through the kitchen. But the doorstep was empty. No footprints in the frost. No shadow on the path. Nothing but the lonely hush of Bramblewick Hill under the moon. Eleanor stepped outside slowly. If someone is playing tricks, show yourself, she called, trying to ignore the trembling in her voice. The only response was a distant echo. A faint hum drifting from whispering rise. A single, drawn-out note. Calling. Again. Behind her, the kitchen door suddenly slammed shut with a violent thud. Eleanor spun around, but the handle refused to turn. Locked. From the inside. She was trapped outside. Alone. And the melody from the hill was growing louder. Eleanor's breath came in shallow gasps as she stared up the slope of whispering rise. The mist hung thick over the hill, twisting around the gnarled trees like living arms. From somewhere beyond the fog came that same haunting melody. Slow. Relentless. Threading through the air like a pulse. Her feet moved almost of their own accord, following the sound. Every step she took was careful, but the grass was slick with dew, making each movement precarious. The closer she got, the clearer the notes became, yet they were unlike any music she had ever heard. There were chords that made her heart ache, harmonies that stirred memories she never lived, and a voice, soft, sorrowful, almost pleading, that threaded itself into the melody. Eleanor reached the clearing at the top of the rise. The mist swirled around her, and at the center, a figure stood beside an ancient stone cairn. The light she had seen before poured from the cairn, pale and cold, illuminating the figure in stark relief. It was a man, but not fully human. His features were both familiar and alien, and his eyes shone with a haunting knowledge. He raised a hand, and the melody stopped abruptly. Silence pressed down like a living weight. Eleanor's knees buckled slightly. You hear it, the figure said, voice echoing unnaturally across the clearing. You are the one who remembers. The one who carries the debt. Eleanor shook her head. I do not understand. Debt? What debt? The figure's gaze seemed to pierce through her. Long before your ancestors walked these lands, a promise was made. A vow sealed with song. Every generation must answer the melody when it calls, or the curse spreads. Eleanor's stomach churned. She remembered the names in the journal. Her bloodline. Her name circled twice. The debt. It all made sense now. Horrible sense. Why me? She asked, voice trembling. Why call me now? Because you are the last who can, he said. And because you must decide. Will you play the song to complete the vow, or will you stop it and take the risk upon yourself? Eleanor's mind whirled. The melody. Her fiancé. The journals. Iris Chapman. All connected in some thread that seemed to tighten with every heartbeat. And if I do nothing, she whispered. The figure's shadow stretched unnaturally, merging with the mist. Then the debt falls upon another. Innocent blood may be lost. The village. Your choice will shape its fate. The wind picked up, carrying the faintest trace of that familiar hum, the tune her fiancé had played so long ago. Eleanor's hands itched toward it, toward the invisible keys in the air. Her heart screamed in recognition and fear. Somewhere deep inside, a memory she did not know she had surfaced. Fingers brushing ivory keys. The laughter of a man long gone. A promise made in silence. And then, as if responding to her hesitation, the melody began again. The haunting song, not on any instrument, but alive in the night. A pulse that reached into her bones, urging her, beckoning, demanding. Eleanor felt the weight of every choice pressing upon her. The air shimmered. The mist writhed. And the figure waited, patient and terrifying, for her decision. The song had begun. The wind swirled violently around Eleanor as the melody rose, vibrating through her chest and teeth. She felt it tugging at something deep inside her, at the part of herself she had tried to forget, the grief, the longing, the guilt she carried for choices made long ago. Her fingers ached as if they could feel the invisible piano keys beneath the night air, calling her to play. The figure beside the cairn did not move, yet Eleanor knew it watched her every heartbeat. The mist parted slightly, revealing the hilltop, barren except for the ancient stones and the pale, unnerving light. She could hear whispers in the wind now, voices speaking in the same cadence as the melody. Names. Her name. The names of those who had fallen before, lost to the song. Eleanor's mind raced. If she played, would it end the curse, or would it bind her forever? If she did nothing, Iris, the villagers, the lives connected to Bramblewick Hill, all of them could pay the price. She swallowed hard, trying to steady her trembling hands. She took a hesitant step forward. The melody shifted, as if sensing her approach, flowing faster, higher, sharper. She felt the presence of her lost fiancé, not as a ghost but as a memory bound to the music. Every note, every vibration, tugged at her heart, threatening to pull her into the past she could not change. "You are ready," the figure whispered. "The song remembers you. It always has." Eleanor paused. Her chest tightened. The wind carried fragments of laughter, music, and sorrow all at once. She thought of Iris, small and fragile, trusting her to act. She thought of the villagers, living under a shadow older than memory. And she thought of her own grief, the hole in her heart left by her fiancé, a melody unfinished. With a trembling breath, Eleanor lifted her hands. The invisible keys spread before her, the air itself bending to the rhythm of the song. Her fingers moved, tentative at first, then with growing confidence, striking chords that resonated across the hill. The figure beside the cairn watched silently, as if waiting for the right moment. The melody fought back, twisting and bending, demanding and pleading. Eleanor's heart ached with every note. Every vibration brought back a memory, a moment lost, a face she had longed to touch. And yet, with every chord, the air began to settle. The mist thinned, the wind softened, and the voices began to fade. Her hands faltered. The final chord approached. Every instinct screamed to stop. Every ounce of courage pushed her forward. She struck the last note, a single pure vibration that hung in the night like a whisper. The wind stilled. The mist vanished. The hilltop was empty. The figure had gone. Silence reigned. Eleanor sank to her knees, chest heaving, fingers still trembling from the song. The burden of the melody, the debt, the curse, it had ended, or at least, it had been altered by her choice. Somewhere below, the village was safe. Somewhere, Iris was safe. And in the quiet that followed, Eleanor finally understood what it meant to face the past, to play the song, and to live with the echoes of memory. Eleanor remained on the hilltop long after the melody had ended. The moon hung low, pale and watchful, bathing Whispering Rise in a silver light that made the stones glimmer. She could feel her heartbeat slowly returning to normal, the tension in her limbs easing, yet the weight of the choice she had made lingered like a shadow that would not lift. Down below, the village of Bramblewick Hill was still. No whispers, no music, no strange lights. Just the quiet of a world breathing normally for the first time in decades. Eleanor let herself exhale, a long shuddering release, knowing she had done what no one else could. She had faced the song, faced the past, and survived. But she was not alone. At the edge of the clearing, a small figure emerged from the mist. Iris Chapman, eyes wide with awe and fear, stepped forward. Eleanor's heart ached at the sight of the girl, fragile but alive. You did it," Iris whispered, her voice trembling. "The song, it stopped." Eleanor knelt and offered a hand. "It did. Because someone had to play it. Because someone had to decide. And you are safe now." Iris smiled faintly, and for a moment, the world seemed lighter. Eleanor could see the gratitude in the child's eyes, a reflection of the hope she had buried deep within herself. The hill fell silent again. No more music, no more shadows. Eleanor felt a strange calm settle over her, the first sense of peace she had known in months. She looked toward the cairn. The pale light had faded completely. The figure that had haunted the hilltop was gone. Eleanor knew the melody might live on in memory, might echo in dreams, but its hold over Bramblewick Hill had ended. She had broken the chain of fear, of obligation, and of sorrow. The village was free, and with it, she felt a weight lift from her own heart. As she walked down the slope toward the warm lights of the parsonage, she realized something profound. The past could never be fully forgotten, but it could be faced, understood, and transformed. The melody was hers, but so too was the choice. And for the first time in a long while, Eleanor felt that she could truly begin again. The village lay quiet, the night still, and for the first time, Eleanor allowed herself to listen, not to the haunting song, but to the gentle rhythm of a life renewed.